We've now had multiple outbreaks connected with the hotel quarantine system. Another facility will be built in Victoria. New South Wales wants the federal government to build and run a facility outside of hotel quarantine. Is it time that we start developing these quarantine hubs?
I've always been very clear, it's the contact tracing. It is not the hotel quarantining. 350,000 people have come back from overseas. Amongst those, there has been 3,500 positive COVID cases. The issue is what happens when they leave quarantining. We need to have that gap filled between quarantining and contact tracing. That is where the failure is occurring. It's when they leave quarantining and enter the community, that's when the outbreak is happening, and they're not getting in control of the outbreak before it happens. And now that we have rapid antigen testing that's available, can be just done with a little nose swab, the result can be in 10 minutes. We can have frequent community-based testing. That's what we need to move to now that we're moving with new variants of concern. We're moving with a more rapidly moving virus. So we need a more rapidly responding community response.
All right, but how big of a role does the vaccine rollout play in this? We are so far behind our rollout right now. The Victorian government had suggested that had we actually been on schedule, it would have prevented a Melbourne-style lockdown. How big of a role does the vaccine rollout play?
Look, people will always say that it has to be one thing or the other. In my view, the vaccine rollout is one part of the armamentarium. Quarantining has been the most effective thing that has kept Australia safe. We know that. We know that locking our international borders has stopped COVID from getting a foothold here in Australia. The second thing is making sure there's no community outbreak. And then the third layer of protection is the vaccine, obviously. It is not the silver bullet. But let's also be clear. Australia has had a massive supply issue. And that is because countries like Europe, where people are dying every day, are putting their own citizens, understandably, ahead of their customers overseas. Now, that is an understandable situation. And because of the forethought of the federal government, we now have a sovereign supply in the form of AstraZeneca. And it's great to see now with the COVID vaccine rollout ramping up, with a massive supply coming online. And now we're getting a great demand because people realise how important the COVID vaccine is one part of the armamentarium. It isn't a silver bullet, it's one part of it. But people are realising if they want to keep themselves safe from COVID, if they want to prevent themselves from dying, then get the COVID vaccine and go out and get it if you're eligible.
The federal government will give an extra 100,000 Pfizer vaccines to Victoria to shore up that state's supply. This morning, the New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian has said that it's only fair that New South Wales gets its share of vaccine supplies. Should assistance be looked at based on the size of a state?
Look, I actually think that we should be opening up, COVID vaccine opportunities in a more open way. I actually think, with regards to AstraZeneca, that we should ask ATAGI, which is the Vaccination Advisory Expert Panel that is advising government response, I think we should ask ATAGI to rethink about AstraZeneca for under 50s. And the reason for that is that there was a caution put on AstraZeneca under 50s early on before doctors worked out how to treat the potential side effects, the very rare but serious side effects of clotting from the AstraZeneca vaccine. Now, we know that the initial treatments for clotting from AstraZeneca were wrong. We understand that doctors were using the wrong treatment to treat clot side effects. They're now using a different therapy, a better therapy, so that the side effects and related deaths that occurred from clotting from AstraZeneca have almost disappeared. So the risk of dying from AstraZeneca-associated clot is minuscule. And we need to make sure that ATAGI, which is the evidence-based, expert-informed advice that's coming to government, I would like them to rethink whether they should open up the opportunities for Australians to receive either AstraZeneca or Pfizer, depending on their category, and that we should rethink whether ATAGI should rethink about the under 50s having access to AstraZeneca, because we have a sovereign supply, and that will mean our supply can open up better and we can get Australians vaccinated more quickly, so that can add to the many layers of defence that we have against COVID, which is incredibly important for all Australians to keep us all safe.
Dr. Katie Allen, appreciate your time. Thank you for joining me this morning.
Thanks so much, Danica.